South Dakota, he talked about that quite a bit, how hard it was, how tough it was on the farm, how they worked at a young age. And I think that instilled in Dad and his brothers the work ethic that they had all their life. He loved his grandchildren. He loved to talk about his grandchildren, and he was proud of his grandchildren. Dad had a few things in his life that he's pretty proud of. One was his 8th grade education, and the other was his wings. He got his wings, and to this day we still don't know how Jerry Stubbe got him on the airplane, but thank you. It opened his world up to a lot of things, and yeah, he was an expert. I'll never forget that. Dad loved Mom. None of us ever doubted that. They first met at a Young People's Convention in 1942. In 1943, they had their first date. It was on their first date that Mom told Dad she was going to marry him. And I thought it was the other way around. But taking a train to California, she surprised him at his parents' house in Chino. They were married on July 6, 1944. And Dad used to talk about how good a softball player Mom was. And that all the boys wanted them on her team. And Dad liked to brag about Mom quite a bit. Dad would often comment that Mom had her choice of any boy in South Dakota, but he would add that she was smart and she married me. It's true that Dad could be demanding of Mom, but we all know how he felt about her. He would often tell friends and family that God never made a better woman than Clara. Numerous pictures of Dad and Mom holding hands are a part of our fondest memories. Dad's greatest joy was being around his family, and went out of the way to ensure that we spent time together. He bought a mobile home at Canyon Lake so we could spend time together as a family to water ski and swim and go fishing. After most of the children relocated, he sold the property and rented cabins in Big Bear. And that has instilled in Irene and I, our families, to get together because that was such a great time. We just really enjoyed those times. Each family would come and stay as long as they were able to, and while enjoying spending time together with Dad and Mom. That was, we still talk about those times. Dad loved his friends, and over the years Dad made a lot of friends. He and Mom enjoyed nothing more than spending time with those friends over a cup of coffee or an evening meal talking about the church. And later on in their life, that was where were they going to eat that evening. Even when at the end we were taking them to Cock-a-Doodle-Doo. How that place still stands, I don't know, but we still go there. He loved to talk about the dairy business, loved to talk about church. Sometimes he'd talk about the pastor and what's happening in the world. The conversation was often punctuated by laughter as they recalled the good old days. I remember taking Dad to coffee and by the Chino burger or whatever, and sometimes I just have to walk away. I'm thinking, this did not happen. They talked about things that it was pretty fun and pretty funny. One story I got to tell you, after he learned how to fly, he came up to, I mean, just talking to Mike. They flew up to Washington for Tim and Heather's wedding. Uncle Al was there, Dad was there, and Uncle Bob was there. And it was a traditional church wedding with buns and so afterwards for the reception. And their dad, Uncle Bob, and Uncle Al talking, 3 different stories going on at the same time. They were all right, and nobody was listening. And that's what him and his brother, he loved his brothers. He didn't like him, he loved them. Dad was always very generous with and supported numerous causes in the church and at the school and with people. He had a special place in his heart for the underdog. I remember that quite often, and would often take the opposite side just because no one else would. He enjoyed helping other people anonymously by dropping off food, clothing, furniture, and other needed items without indicating who the gift came from. On one occasion, he would have one of his son-in-laws drop off appliances in the middle of the night. Other times he would send people cash in the mail or simply put an envelope in the mailbox. Also, he was in the real estate, in the dairy land real estate. And I remember quite a few times that we would drive around. He says, you know, I could have owned this piece of ground, but somebody else wanted it. He helped transition a lot of people from the Bellflower area to Chino with land. I know some of the ground that they started out with was sand dunes and turned out to be pretty nice dairy farm later on. So he really enjoyed that part of his life too, was the real estate. Dad spent a great amount of time and energy on behalf of the church. Over the years, he served as deacon and elder. He took the responsibilities of each office seriously. He and Mom were charter members of the First Chino and was a proud role they played as a building committee chairman during the time in which the church building was constructed. And I still remember those times because he was at church quite a bit. And Mr. Verhoeven, you were there quite a bit. There was quite a few who put a lot of time into that. And it was a big part of the Chino, city of Chino also. Dad had a very moral, he did not like swearing. He did not like drinking. He was very staunch on that. Hate dealers really recognized that. He was pretty well known on the hay dealer route, you know, checking out a load of hay, cutting out a little bit off to check it. He didn't tolerate swearing or taking the Lord's name in vain, and on one occasion a dairy inspector learned the same lesson. The dairy inspector came to grade the dairy. Dad followed him as he made his rounds, but became upset with him when he continued to swear. Dad told the inspector in no uncertain terms that unless he stopped, he would have to leave the property. The inspector looked at Dad with surprise and asked him if he knew that he had the power to shut down the dairy. Dad said it didn't matter. No one was going to use the Lord's name in the way he was while he was there. The inspector left without finishing the inspection. He returned a few days later and told Dad that no one had ever complained about his language before, and he apologized and told Dad he would not swear, or at least when not Dad was present. Dad practiced confrontational evangelism. He would begin conversations with complete strangers in restaurants while waiting in the doctor's office, which would become embarrassing at times. It's like, come on, Dad, but he was not embarrassed. At some point in time, he would ask a question, what's your problem? Or make a comment about what's wrong with you. Then he would add, I can't walk very well anymore. And at some point, he would ask the question, do you know Jesus? Surprisingly enough, most people didn't get upset with Dad, but actually responded in a positive way. Some even thanked him. All of us have different memories of Dad. One of his granddaughters wrote about her memories. I remember Grandpa's big heart for animals. Dad finally gave up the dairy when the dog went to South Dakota. What dog was that went to South Dakota? Wendy went. He was so worried about Wendy, and when Wendy went to South Dakota, he could finally leave the dairy, I think. One of the dogs. He loved his dogs. Sometimes more than us. He had a box of Kentucky. All right, we're going to guess this hurt. He had a box of Kentucky Fried Chicken in the refrigerator that we cannot touch because that was for the dog. Okay, I got it out. Anyway, I remember Grandpa's big heart for animals. He knew everybody, no matter what walk of life they were. I remember the extreme love he had for his family and joy expressed when they were around him. He often struggled, but he held fast to God's promises and had a non-compromising life and active faith to God. While thinking about what tremendous marathon he had competed in, knowing he was now leaving his purpose in life, as he glorifies God, I have to smile. Smile because even though every fiber of flesh and joyous thought were under full attack for years, he made it to see 2014. For our boys and for whatever other great-grandchildren to grow up and resemble their grandpa, what a legacy he is, and I miss him. We all miss him. He was a leader and a God-fearing man, and we appreciate him for that. Thank you.